Welcome to SMR Bitesize. Wednesday's reality check's coming right up. But before that, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe to the channel. Welcome to part 2 of our 3-week special series on a Wednesday, attempting to bust the 3 biggest Brexit myths of all. Namely, that by leaving the European Union, we would take back control of our money, our borders, and our laws. Last week we took a look at money and concluded that Brexit appears to have made us all considerably poorer. That aside, this week we're looking at borders. More specifically, of course, immigration, both legal and illegal, whatever that means to the current government. And yes, over the next 5 minutes or so, we will be bringing you the truth about Brexit and immigration. It was an issue that played a significant part in shaping some people's opinions prior to the Brexit referendum in 2016, and it still does very much to this day. Barely a day goes by without a right-wing channel like GB News blaming asylum seekers in small boats for pretty much all of our woes, which in turn whips up near hysterical levels of vitriol amongst certain sectors of society in certain places, such as here in Skegness, when it comes to just where those asylum seekers are temporarily housed. Then there's the government's so-called plans, like their much-derided Rwanda scheme, shoveling as many as possible into disused army bases or prison ships moored off the coast. But you know what? Pretty much all of this is simply a distraction technique designed to divert our attention away from the fact that the government simply haven't got a grip on immigration at all. And there's a reason for that. You want the short answer, don't you? Well, here it is. They know right now, in post-Brexit Britain, we really need immigration. Frankly, as much of it as we can get. The problem is, of course, convincing us of the exact opposite plays brilliantly to their base and wins them votes. What a predicament. Well, that's the bottom line, but you're going to need more than that. So here it is. Since Brexit was implemented in 2020, for obvious reasons, one being that we told them all to sod off, immigration to the UK from the EU has plummeted. But due to our ageing population, the numbers on long-term sick and various other factors, job vacancies remain staggeringly high. So, inevitably, immigration to the UK from outside the EU has gone through the roof. Now, putting aside the fact that we, of course, think that's a good thing, it's a necessity, and it adds to the rich diversity of our country, as well as, quite literally, Hamilton style, getting the job done, although, of course, it would make a lot more sense if it was the geographically closer EU workers doing those jobs. Well, like I said, the government's in a real pickle. And look at this, since Brexit, the numbers arriving on those small boats has also skyrocketed. But hey, let's just blame the French for that. It's a lot easier than accepting we've hardly taken back control of our borders, is it? But, and this may surprise you, people arriving this way make up only around 10% of the net immigration figures. So let's focus on the 90%. And that would be, by the government's own definition, legal migration. Here's some facts for you from the always brilliant TLDR News.
In 2022, the Home Office issued nearly 270,000 work visas, including nearly 170,000 being permanent worker visas. For context, this means nearly twice as many work visas as in 2019, and over 2.5 times as many permanent visas. According to data obtained by the Financial Times via cleverly worded Freedom of Information requests, this number has only risen in the past few months, with the majority of these work visas going to health professionals, especially nurses and social care workers and IT professionals. Again, as we see it, there are 3 reasons for this spike in work visas. First, the UK no longer has freedom of movement with the EU to plug the gaps in our workforce. Second, the UK has a remarkably low unemployment rate, with over 1 million jobs still open, which are being filled by foreign workers. This is partly because a significant fraction of Brits are still apparently unable to work post-pandemic. A combination of early retirement and long-term sickness means that over 5 million Brits are currently on out-of-work benefits. But perhaps the main reason for this is Boris Johnson's new Australian-style points-based immigration system, introduced in early 2021. At the time, most people assumed it would bring down immigration, which is why people like Nigel Farage were so keen on it. However, it turns out you really don't need many points to get a worker visa, which is why numbers have since skyrocketed. When he introduced the new system, Johnson scrapped the cap on work visas, axed a law requiring employers to first advertise jobs in the UK, and lowered the salary threshold for skilled workers from £30,000 to as low as £20,480 in certain sectors, which is only just above the national living wage. So you get the idea. In spite of his rhetoric, Boris Johnson actually introduced one of the most liberal immigration systems in the world, which is perhaps the main reason why the UK's net immigration numbers are as high as they are.
The evidence to back that up is staggering. It's not within the spirit of Bitesize to bring you all of it, so with that in mind, we've picked this one. Professor Tim Bale's call to Sheila Fogarty on LBC.
Well, I mean, I think post-Brexit, we've had an incredibly liberal immigration policy, although most people don't realise it. The difference being is that most of the people coming, and there are an awful lot of them, maybe 700,000 over the last year, are coming not from the EU anymore, but coming from other countries, particularly South Asian countries and East and West Africa. So, we've imported a whole lot of people, but they're just coming, not from Europe, but coming from those places anymore. I mean, immigration for the Conservatives is a bit of a double-edged sword, I think, because on the one hand, I think they do think it's a wedge issue that they can employ, to break off some of Labour's core support, more sort of working class, less educated voters who, are very, very concerned about immigration. But on the other hand, for the Conservatives, if they don't deliver on these promises that they make, I think a lot of voters who might perhaps have supported them in 2019 are going to say, well, what have you done?
So if you find yourself agreeing with this guy...
What are your thoughts on the government dealing with immigration at the moment?
Well, I'm not a big fan of their approach in general, because I think they use it as a bit of a tool to whip up support for the more kind of negative side of their base. So I wouldn't say that it's a particularly constructive policy that they've got. I'd rather they were looking at where immigration can be used to benefit the country, and obviously you have to have a robust system, but it seems to be a big distraction from where they need to be going with it.
Well, good for you. Pragmatic, compassionate, and most importantly, a view derived entirely from the facts. So, to conclude, the government have brought this one entirely on itself. We need immigration with relatively open borders, preferably to those closest to us anyway, and government actions support that entirely. So sad then that their divisive and hate-fueled rhetoric is going in completely the opposite direction. If you enjoyed this video, visit 16millionrising.co.uk, where you can listen to this week's full radio show for free, support us with a donation, buy us a coffee, or subscribe as an early riser. Back tomorrow.